Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, from whichever part of the world that you're joining in from. Thank you so much for joining us on this terrific Tuesday. And I'm sure it's going to become all the more happening, all the more interesting for all of you because we have a wonderful and very insightful topic brought to you today by Case Western University's Weatherhead School of Management. But before I go into more details, I can see almost 70 plus of you who have dialed in the chat window. Quickly, if you could let us know which city you're dialing in from. I'm dialing in from Mumbai. I have folks here who are dialing in from Cleveland. So we really want to know which city you're dialing in from. So we have someone who's dialing in from Dhule, which is in India. Avinash, welcome to the webinar. We have someone from Karachi, Pakistan. Okay, great. Wow, so different people from different parts of the world. If you can keep that going and let us know. We have someone from Jaipur, Rajasthan. Anyone else who's from outside of India or any other city, please let us know which city you are dialing in from today. Like I mentioned, a very, very interesting topic. Today, we are going to be talking about tariffs and turbulence, decoding supply chain impact. What is going to be talking about is unpacking the real world effects of tariffs on global businesses. So you're going to get a chance to explore how tariffs, trade regulations, and geopolitical shifts today sort of shape the global supply chain management. So you'll learn about the various factors that influence costing, sourcing decisions, operational risks, and much more. I am not the master in the masterclass today, so I'm going to keep it to that. But surely when Professor comes online, he's going to be talking more. But like I mentioned earlier, in the chat window, if you could let us know which city you're dialing in from, I can see we are close to 130 uh, audience in the audience today. Like I mentioned previously, today's masterclass is brought to you by the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University, which is located in Cleveland, Ohio. Weatherhead is known for its strong focus on design thinking, organizational behavior, and data analytics, and it offers international students such as yourself, if you're planning to apply, a very supportive environment to grow, gain global exposure, and build successful careers. So, a quick round of introduction to the panel today as to who is joining us. I'll start with myself. My name is Sabahat Hurzuk. I'm a senior director at Seed Global Education. We're a UK headquartered company which facilitates interactions from top global universities like the one that we have with us here today and prospective students like yourself, giving you a chance to connect with the faculty and admissions representative at these universities, giving you a taste of the programs being offered and helping you make those choices about your future education goals, your career plans, etc. Joining me on the panel today is Dr. Golder, who's the faculty director of the Master of Supply Chain Management and an associate professor in the Department of Operations at Weatherhead School of Management. He actually teaches a wide array of subjects ranging from operations and supply chain courses in both the MBA and the MS CM program. And his teaching portfolio includes lean operations, operational excellence, supply chain strategy, Six Sigma, and much more. I'm going to allow him to get into more detail when he starts with this presentation. But for now, thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. Along with him, we have Stephanie, who's the Director of Admissions and the Senior Director at Weatherhead School of Management. She's an experienced recruitment director who's been with us in India also of recent. And of course, she is your go-to person. If you're someone who's looking to apply to the Weatherhead School of Management or just wants to know more, Stephanie is your go-to person. And yes, on that note, she is going to be holding a small online group meetup where she will have an opportunity to connect with a few of you who wish to speak to her, get more advice about the programs, about your profile, if Weatherhead is the right fit for you, and all of those questions that you have in your head. I will be dropping in a link soon for you. So please make sure to register because we have extremely limited slots available. I see we are inching close to 200 of you who are going to be gathered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my first poll question for the evening today on the screen in front of you. Very simply, what do you think is the most important skill for managing supply chain challenges today? Do you think it's problem solving? Do you think it's data analyzing? Do you think it's just communication? Or is it something more deeper, such as understanding global events? So, on the screen in front of you is the first poll question for this evening. What do you think is the most challenging skill for managing supply chain challenges today? Problem solving, data analytics, communication, or understanding global events. according to you, it could be more than one, but let me know which one do you think is the most relevant out of the lot that I have shared. And here's the best part. There's no right or wrong answers. We just want to know what exactly do you think it is. And then, of course, with that, I will hand over to Professor. So I'm going to keep this running on the screen for a few more seconds, giving you a chance to sort of drop your answers there. And like I promised about the meetups, I am going to be sharing a link with you, which I have done in the chat window. So for those of you who are tuned in, if you're from India or around Southeast Asia or Africa, please feel free to register for this event. With that, I'm going to end this poll and share the results. So 44% of the audience today feel, Professor, it is understanding global events, followed by data analytics, problem solving, and communication. So with that, I will now hand over to Professor to take us to his presentation and enlighten us as to what could be the reasons for this.
Well, that's very timely because we're going to spend some time talking about understanding global impacts. First, a brief introduction for me. I am Professor Mike Goulder. Most of my career has been spent as a practitioner, not an academic. I was a mechanical engineer graduate a long time ago. I worked in companies including IBM, McKinsey, Booz Allen Hamilton, American Greetings. I retired a few years ago, earned my doctorate, and here I am teaching at the Weatherhead School. And one of the things I've been studying over the past year is the impact of tariffs on the global supply chain. So let me open up my presentation and we'll get right into it. Let me just move some things around on my screen a little bit. There we go. So, tariffs and global supply chains. My somewhat humorous subtitle, Where in the World is My iPhone? We'll come back to that in a few minutes. So, some things I want to talk about today. A little bit of definition, a little bit of history. Let's talk about tariff math 101. The good news is you do not need to have mastered differential equations to understand tariff math. It's really pretty simple. We'll go through some examples and talk about what's next. According to Webster's English Dictionary, a tariff is simply a list of taxes placed by a government on imported goods, and it shows up in a tariff list. Very simple example. So perhaps a coil of steel is made in Canada and sold to a US customer for $1,000. A tariff of 25% or $250 is levied upon import. So the US customer now must pay $1,250, whereas before the tariff, they only paid $1,000. Pretty simple. Sometimes when you hear government officials talk about tariffs, they're not talking about it this way, but this is correct. A little bit of a history lesson, which is really important to understand. So this is a 100-year look at tariffs from a US perspective. So we can see that tariffs peaked in the 1930s, the Great Depression in the US. And ever since 1935, they have generally been declining. So we see a huge decline through the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then a gradual decline until the 2010s. And then this year, things got very exciting. So in April of 2025, the US administration announced a set of tariffs that originally spiked up into the mid-20s. Over the next few months, they went up and down and sideways, but eventually ended up in the high teens, below 20%. But these numbers have been changing on a daily basis, and I've given up trying to stay current because it's just, there's too much. But if you look at where the US is right now, from a century-long perspective, we are almost at the highest level that we've seen, only slightly below the level of the Great Depression, and down a little bit from the original spike in April of 2025. Continuing with this long-term perspective, if we look at US gross domestic product involving international trade over a 50-year time horizon, it has been almost a straight line increase through the 70s, 80s, 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and more recently, some drops. But this growth was enabled by literally exponential growth in global shipping capacity. So if you look at the chart on the left, whoops, sorry about that. The chart on the left shows us the container freight capacity in terms of millions of tons globally. This is from the United Nations. And you can see amazing growth, almost continuous growth, except for the Great Recession of the 2008, 2009 time horizon. And one of the many reasons for this is the growth of global shipping capacity. So here we see one of the large freight carriers. These ships keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and lowering the cost of international commerce. So if we go one click deeper, what is driving this growth? Well, for as long as industrial economies have been operating, manufacturers have always been looking for ways to manufacture efficiency. It's about the right products at the right time at the lowest cost. Period. End of story. Lower cost at the same level of quality generates higher profits. And in recent decades, maybe the past 30 or 40 years, overlapping, perhaps coincidentally with my career, a few trends have really increased the complexity and impact of various supply chain options. Increasingly, companies have been segmenting their supply chains into various make and buy components, and generally increasing the level of the buy component. And that has fueled the development of global suppliers, lower cost and better capabilities. And there's a bit of a virtuous cycle here, because the more and better global suppliers there are, the more of the manufacturers are willing to segment their supply chains into make and buy components. The one phenomena that has underlined this more than anything else has been the China manufacturing miracle, if you will. And that's not to denigrate the impact of any other manufacturing economy in the world, whether it's India or the United States or Germany. But what's happened in China over the past quarter century or more has been truly amazing, to the point where now China produces 30% of global output. One of the drivers, not the only driver, but one of the very important drivers of this phenomena is economics. So if we look at average monthly manufacturing wages across a variety of economies, the US, Germany, France, Canada, etc., Japan, China, India, we see that China manufacturing wages are roughly 20% those of the USA's. So all else held equal, a US company thinking about segmenting its manufacturing into make and buy components and offshoring some of the components to China would, before the cost of shipping, see an 80% decrease in manufacturing cost. And as we talked about just a minute ago, the volume and the cost of global shipping has been coming down this entire time. So there is a huge economic premium for moving stuff to China. But that's not the only thing that has been happening recently. In addition to being cheap, China has built amazing world-class capabilities. based on a number of factors, including the availability of skilled labor, unskilled labor, managerial labor, the amazing proliferation of raw material suppliers and subcomponent supply chains. If anyone on this webinar has been in Shenzhen, China, uh, it is the most amazing bazaar of components, subcomponents, electronics. You can walk down the street in Shenzhen, and what you can find within a quarter mile of walking is unmatched anywhere in the world. Everything a manufacturer needs for a wide variety of products can be provided quickly and relatively locally. So whereas maybe in the 1990s, China started out as a cheap option for sourcing, it's still a relatively cheap option for sourcing, but it has become reliable and very high quality. And, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say China is now the world's manufacturing juggernaut. Juggernaut meaning um, amazing force to be reckoned with. And if you just look at the chart in the bottom right-hand corner, again, this is from United Nations data. China is not just the number one manufacturer on the planet. They are the number one manufacturer by a large margin, producing almost twice what the United States does, and almost 6 times what either Japan or Germany produces, and 10 times what India produces. So I call it the manufacturing miracle. You can probably see where it's going, but before we talk about the implications of all this, let's just spend a couple of minutes on Tariff Math 101. And again, as I promised, you do not need to know differential equations or advanced statistics to follow this part of the discussion. Let's just go into a very simple, perhaps oversimplified example. A surfboard manufacturer is thinking about outsourcing its products to either Mexico or China. It's currently made in the US. And let's just simplify things by saying we only care about wages, transportation, and overhead. And in this very simple first example, let's say that there are 0 tariffs from Mexico into the United States and 5% tariffs from China. This is exactly the tariff situation that was in place a few years ago. So we can see that in the US, you could build that surfboard for $110. If you outsourced it to Mexico, you could build it for $95. And if you outsourced it to China, even after paying for the 5% tariff, you could build it for $84. So therefore, under this hypothetical example that uses real tariffs of a few years ago, China is by far the economically advantaged sourcing location. And this pattern basically explains how huge amounts of production moved out of the United States, out of Northern Europe, out of a number of locations into China, because these economics, which is very compelling. But what happens if the China tariff increases to 25%? It's the same situation, same economic components, but now you can see in red that we're now imposing a 25% tariff on China. So now the surfboard costs $110 in the US, $95 in Mexico, and $100 in China. What will the economically rational producer do? Well, they'll say, okay, Mexico is now the advantage source. I'll start producing my surfboards in Mexico. So a China tariff of 25% in this hypothetical example will cause a company to change its sourcing strategy. Let's look at one more situation. Let's look at the case of a 25% Mexico tariff and a 150% China tariff, or even 245% China tariff. This was, as things were bouncing around in early April, these were actually the real tariffs in place at that moment in time. But let's just look at the 150% tariff example. So it still costs us $110 to make it in the US. Mexico now has $118.75 because they're now paying that 25% Mexican tariff of almost $24. But China now sees a huge tariff of $120, and the surfboard is now $200. So what happens now? Well, the US is now advantaged. So theoretically, and in some cases practically, a country rather, can influence economically rational sourcing directions, choices through tariffs. And this is, I think, exactly what is happening in the United States right now, or at least this is the game that's being played. But it misses some very important implications that we need to talk about next. Because I think in the real world, it's not enough to say, great, we've moved surfboard manufacturing back to the United States. Apparently, that's good. Or is it? So, what about the consumer? Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the consumer. In a pre-tariff war scenario, this company was going to source the surfboard from $84 in China. Let's just pretend that there's a 50% markup to retail. That would mean that the consumer would pay $126 for this surfboard. But in scenario three, the one we just talked about, with Mexico at 25% and China at 150%, domestic manufacturing is still $110, but it's now the lowest cost option because tariffs have increased the cost of the Mexico and China option. So let's put that same 50% markup on the product. The consumer now pays $165. The price of the surfboard has just increased by roughly 50%. It's the same surfboard, the consumer's paying more. It's seen in the eyes of consumers as inflation. Now, we're still seeing how the inflation impact of tariffs are playing out in the United States, and people much smarter than I are still trying to figure out what's happening. But these fundamental economics are behind the scenes. They can't be ignored. So tariffs reduce efficiency and drive inflation. And there's just no way to get around that. Despite what politicians might say, it's just a fact. So what does this mean for global supply chains? Well, I think it means destabilization. And before I was a professor at the Weatherhead School at Case Western Reserve University, I was running supply chains. Many of my friends are still running supply chains. It is a crazy time. If we think about it from a very big picture standpoint, and the chart in the upper left-hand side, this is basically a heat map of economies and global flows in and out. Some fun facts. Today, most consumer products typically cross more than 4 borders before reaching consumers. And in particular, component sourcing is very complex. Automotive component sourcing involves an ecosystem of more than 60 countries. Electronics, more than 20 countries. And manufacturing is highly specialized by region. It has taken us a half a century to create this very intertwined global economy. And it's been very, very good for standards of living and consumers. So tariffs disrupt this very complex, very interwoven ecosystem. Today's US tariff structure, if it sticks, if it remains in place, implies a massive upheaval. So, as I just mentioned, these interdependent global supply chains were gradually built up over the past 30, 40, or even 50 years. And they could be rendered uneconomic with the stroke of a pen. And that's exactly what happened in mid-April of 2025. Sourcing from China and other low-wage countries became prohibitive. Now, those tariffs have been moving around, but they're still high by historical standards. Plus, while the tariffs could be instituted instantaneously, there's nowhere near enough, for example, US domestic capacity or capacity in Taiwan or Vietnam or India, or you pick your country. Building factories in any part of the globe can take years to plan, build, equip, and staff. I have, I have, I've started up new factories. I've shut down factories. These are very complicated, multi-million dollar things to build, equip, and staff. And I'm sure that all senior executives are asking themselves the same question. Without certainty about future tariffs, what do I do? Do I spend $100 million to move my manufacturing production from southern China to, you pick the economy, Vietnam? Because with the stroke of a pen, that could be an uneconomic place. And in fact, that particular comparison, there were a number of companies, US companies, that decided I have too much risk with my Chinese manufacturing footprint. I'm going to start moving it. For example, the big tennis shoe companies, Adidas, for example, German company, sells globally, moved a lot of their production out of China and into Vietnam. Well, in mid-April, Vietnamese tariffs into the US in particular were massively increased. So all of a sudden, years of planning and the expense of moving production from China into Vietnam was rendered uneconomic. What I really fear about, and what a lot of my peers and friends who are in senior supply chain positions right now, is companies are locked in analysis paralysis. They're not going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to move production. They're going to wait. They're going to wait and see what happens. Will these tariffs stay in place? Well, nobody knows. In the near term, meaning this year and into 2026, two bad things are likely to happen. And I'm taking particularly a USA-centric view here, but we're likely to see supply shortages. So in the second and third quarters of 2025, a lot of companies began to accelerate their inputs to beat the tariff. A lot of the Christmas items that are being sold right now were accelerated, were brought in as early as possible to try to beat the tariffs. What's happening now is companies are delaying shipments, hoping that if they just wait long enough, the tariffs will come down again. The problem is, and by the way, if any of you come and study with me at Case Western Reserve University, we'll go into detail on this. There's something called the bullwhip effect. And if you're interested in learning more, Google it. The bullwhip effect says that small changes in supply and demand at the very front end of a supply chain accelerate. The amplitude grows as they get closer to consumers, destabilizing global supply chains. We've seen a little bit of this already. It's unclear when or if we'll see a lot more, but I do worry about it. And then the second bad thing that has already started to happen, price increases. So if the company says, I'm not going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars and wait years for my non-China source or my non-Vietnam source, or pick your country, I'm just going to pay the tariff. I'm going to pay it in the near term because I'm not confident that I know the long-term solution. A company can absorb that tax for a little while, but not forever. Eventually, they're going to have to pass that tax or that tariff along to consumers as a price increase, fueling inflation. For example, there's a 25% car tariff that was in place from Germany and Japan into the U.S. That would increase the price of a $25,000 VW Jetta to $30,000. It's a significant price increase. By the way, the reason it doesn't increase it by 25% is because the tariff is applied at the wholesale level. And lots of economists are studying this impact in the United States. We're not seeing huge inflation, but we are seeing persistent inflation above the Federal Reserve's target. So, it's building up, even though it hasn't caught on fire yet. But neither of these things are good. The disruption of the supply chain, the price increases, they're not good for consumers. They're not good for companies. They're just not good. Let's walk through an example, maybe an extreme example, but an interesting one nonetheless. iPhones, very popular product globally. As we study in one of my supply chain classes, supply chain strategy, Apple over the past quarter century has built an amazing and truly global supply chain. The little iPhone that I've got in my pocket has components from all over the world. Microelectronics from Taiwan, semiconductors from Italy, flash memory from the US, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi components from Japan, networking components from Germany, all of which or almost all of which are assembled in Shenzhen, China, at a few very, very large facilities, prominently run by Foxconn. It's an amazing supply chain. It does an amazing job of providing a very high quality product at a relatively low price. Now that I say that, an iPhone's $1,000 now. Is that a low price? I don't know. But that's another topic for another day. The tariffs were set to dramatically increase the prices of iPhones and destabilize this amazing supply chain. So a 54% tariff, for example, would increase Apple's cost. Doesn't say anything about prices at retail, but Apple's cost from $550 to $850. And you could see in the chart where these which components would bear what tariff impact. And by the way, that 54% isn't just made up. That was the exact tariff in place on April 5th. It's changed numerous times since then. For example, by mid-April of 2025, there was a 150% tariff in place across many of these components that would drive, in theory, Apple's costs from $550 to $1,375. And then if we try to approximate what this would mean eventually at retail, if we assume that Apple's markup to consumers would be about the same, that $1,100 cell phone could be as much as $2,750. Well, that's pretty crazy. A lot of people are not going to spend $2,750 for an iPhone. As of mid-April, Apple received a temporary exemption from tariffs. I think it's still in place, although these things change day by day by day. But it took intervention on behalf of the senior leadership from Apple, begging, negotiating with the U.S. federal government to be let out of this. I think the point is wherever these end up, wherever the tariffs end up, they have huge implications for some of the most intelligently designed supply chains on the planet. And by the way, as some of you may know, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, his career was primarily spent building and refining Apple's supply chains. And when Steve Jobs died of cancer at a fairly young age, they promoted Tim Cook. A lot of people said, "Boy, what are you doing promoting a supply chain executive to run a product company?" But it's so far been a pretty good decision. Tim's done a great job running Apple. In light of all this, what should Apple do? Imagine that you're an analyst in Cupertino, California, helping Apple figure out what to do with their supply chain. Well, the consequences of tariffs are enormous. What if they hadn't negotiated that exemption from the US administration? A $2,700 retail phone? Well, that's just crazy. It's going to drive demand away. But the implications of remaking Apple's iPhone supply chain is huge. Literally billions of investment, perhaps 1, 2, 3, or more years to fully implement, incredible disruption. Now, in the meantime, the iPhone tariffs are paused. They are perhaps likely to change again, but who knows? And the course of action for companies is unclear. Massive disruption on a global scale. How bad could it get? Well, if we look back to 5 years ago, the the pandemic caused the most disruptive, so the most disruptive impact on the supply chain in the history of global commerce. You know, when the pandemic hit, there were supply constraints first in China, then they moved to other countries, then back to China. Many governments instituted demand stimuli, leading to consumption increases. Supply and demand were out of sync. Um, I think we all remember it was a time when you just couldn't get stuff very reliably, and it took years. There were global shortages on a massive scale. I think a lot of companies, looking at the trade wars of the first US Trump administration, started to reduce their reliance on China. This is data from the US Census Bureau, analyzed by Bloomberg, and it clearly demonstrates that there was a significant reduction of China's share of US imports, a significant reduction in response to that first trade war, from maybe like a 22% level to a 15% level. Lots of ups and downs, but a downward trend. But yet, the way that they reduce their reliance on China, in some cases, is not serving them well right now. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies shifted to other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam. At that very same time period where we saw the US's import share of China decreasing significantly, we saw Vietnam's manufacturing imports to the US increase by 50%, led by a wide variety of companies, including tech companies like Apple, Samsung, Intel, Google, textile, apparel industries. And Vietnam was forging trade agreements like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So that's a good thing, right? Diversify your supply base, protect yourself against risks. Well, sometimes not. As of a couple of months ago, Vietnam's tariff on manufacturing imports was 46%. I didn't look it up today, but these numbers have been changing. While it was a fraction of Chinese tariffs at that time, 150%, it's still a major penalty, causing companies to say, wow, maybe Vietnam is not a useful diversification location. Maybe I need to think about another location. But, and this is the important part about tariffs, with the stroke of a pen, it can change again. And it's incredibly hard to predict. The other thing that's worth noting, at least briefly, is that the capital markets, And this is the US capital markets, appear to understand the implications of tariffs pretty darn well. If we look what happened earlier this year, the day that the tariffs were announced, Liberation Day, there was a huge downward drop in the markets. The biggest one day and then there was the 90-day pause. The administration said, up, well, we didn't mean to go so fast, perhaps in reaction to the market drops. And we saw the biggest one-day gain since 2008. And candidly, the markets have fully recovered since this point as the immediate implications of tariffs have seemed to have receded a little bit, but they haven't gone away because those underlying economic implications are still completely in play. So, what happens next? By the way, I don't have the answer. If I did, I would borrow a huge amount of money and I would invest. But I want to tell you one more thing before I get off the podium, so to speak. And that is, here's maybe the one bright spot, if there is a bright spot. Tariffs and the disruption they cause are definitely bad news for companies and consumers. They tend to be good news for supply chain professionals. Why? Because as the global trading system gets increasingly complex, the demand for supply chain expertise grows and grows significantly. And I'll stop with one more thought. Some good friends of mine from McKinsey recently wrote this white paper, Moving Supply Chain Leaders to the C-Suite. They might be thinking about Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, but their premise is basically, as the global supply chain gets crazier and crazier, we need supply chain professionals more and more. So with that, I will pause.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for the wonderful session. It was absolutely insightful, as you can see, with the number of questions that have come in. But I would request everyone to please hold on to their seats, so to speak, because I'm going to be getting on with my second poll for the evening today before I allow Stephanie to sort of come in and talk to us a little bit more about the school and the programs and its offerings. With that, the second poll question on the screen in front of you. As an prospective applicant, what matters to you most in a graduate school community? Are you looking for supportive faculty and mentorship? Are you looking for universities that offer small class sizes? Are you looking for somewhere where you have an opportunity for strong peer collaboration? Are you looking for somewhere which has active student clubs and events? Or are you looking to get more access to alumni and industry leaders? I'm sure the right answer is all of the above. But again, like I mentioned earlier, we just want to understand as to which of these really hold very high importance in your search for the right kind of graduate school or graduate school community for you. So, very quickly on the screen in front of you, what matters most to you in a graduate school community? Is it supportive faculty and mentorship? Is it small class sizes? Is it strong peer collaboration? Is it active student clubs and events? Or are you looking to get more access to alumni and industry leaders? So, I'm going to be running this for a few more seconds with request. We're close to 215 of us in the audience. If all of you could go and cast your vote, that would really help us get an understanding. Great. So quite a few of you have already posted your opinions. I'm going to go and share the results. So, wow, we have a tie between supportive faculty and mentorship and access to alumni and industry leaders, closely followed by the others. So, thank you so much for all those of you who participated. With that, over to you, Stephanie. Let's talk a little bit more about the Weatherhead School of Management.
Okay, welcome everyone and good evening. Very excited to be here today to share a little bit with you about Weatherhead School of Management. I'm going to talk both broadly about Cleveland, about our campus, a little bit about our programs. Also, obviously, we're going to talk about career focus in this next couple of minutes, and then I'll end us off with ways that you can connect with me directly and links to a upcoming information session that will have a lot more deep dive information on this event. But also, if you want to sign up for one of the smaller group sessions that we'll be doing with Seed, I definitely look forward to connecting with you there too. So I am Stephanie Nunley. I'm the Senior Director of Admissions here at the Weatherhead School of Management, and I work very closely with Dr. Mike Golder on our specialized master's programs and how we promote those across the world and get the best students to come here, but also to share our expertise with them. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure we have our PowerPoint presentation up. Okay, perfect. So again, we're talking today about our specialized master's program. Okay, very flashy slide just to start us off. Cleveland, Ohio. Sahabat mentioned earlier that we are located in Cleveland, Ohio. If you're not familiar with our city, it's a very thriving city. We have 4 different major league sports teams. We have one of the largest metro park systems in the US. We're located right in the heart of the Midwest. So if you've seen the heart-shaped state, that's right beneath Lake Erie in the Great Lakes region. We're about equal distance from New York and Chicago, about an hour-and-a-half flight. So very, very close to other really big cities and metropolitan areas. But Cleveland in and of itself is a great place to work, live, and play, especially when you're here. One of the big things I mentioned about Cleveland is that we're one of the cities in the US that has one of the lowest cost of living. So while you're here studying, you want to be able to enjoy some of these fun things. This is the place to be. If you're in New York paying $5,000 for rent for a closet, you will be broke. So consider Cleveland as a good place to start your education and be here while you're getting your skills up. With that, our campus. So we have a really great campus. We're celebrating our 200-year anniversary as a school this year, which is really great. As you can see on the screen, we're located in an area of town that is called Uptown. So we're not Midtown or downtown, we're just Uptown. This is one of the cultural arts districts of our city. So you'll see things like our Cleveland Art Museum, which has world-renowned artists that study here, that showcase here. We also have Little Italy. So if you're interested in Italian food, there's lots of activities for you to do outside of the classroom, just outside, just steps away from our door. We're also in what we call the healthcare hub. So Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals, and the largest Veterans Affairs hospital in the country is located just steps from our door. So if you're interested, we can talk a little bit more about Cleveland. I love that. So getting into Case Western Reserve a little bit more, I do like to share with you our mission. So what is it that we stand for? What is it that we're proud of as a school? Our mission at Weatherhead is to transform the world's most complex challenges into humanity's greatest breakthroughs. That ties in very well with what Dr. Golder was just talking about, thinking about tariffs and sort of the world's challenges and the complexity of how things are changing and ever evolving in society. We want to train our students so that you're at the forefront of that, so that you're getting all that you need to be able to be a driver of that change, but also being able to navigate that change as you go through your career, not just through your schooling. Okay. Our core values are curiosity, collaboration, and courage. Right. A little bit about our building. I can't not mention it because our building is so very unique. We are located in the Peter B. Lewis building here at Case Western Reserve University. The Peter B. Lewis building is named after Peter B. Lewis, who is founder and chairman of Progressive Auto Insurance, one of the largest insurers in the US. Also, they're based right here in Cleveland. Not only are they based here, but over 40% of the Fortune 500 companies have a base here in Cleveland, which means that you're just that well connected to industry. Also, if you notice on the screen, our building is very unique, right? It's not a typical building. It is very innovative, and it very much leans into that whole idea of being at the forefront of technology, of design, and pushing the envelope. It was designed by Frank Gehry, a world-renowned architect. If you've seen the Guggenheim in Bilbao, Spain, this is also the same architect who designed this building. I think it teaches our students to be innovative in the ways that they think about problem solving, right? It's really cool, really cool place to work and learn. Okay. A little bit about our campus and some of the major centers that we have here that our students get involved in. I noticed in the chat that some of you mentioned how you're really interested in experiential learning. Well, this is the program for you, and this is the school for you. We have that as one of our major pillars. It's involved in our curriculum as well as outside of the curriculum. So these centers focus kind of outside of the curriculum. Our Fowler Center for Business as an agent of world business benefit focuses on sustainable business and adding value to through sustainability. We've had students work with the Fowler Center in our B Corp certification lab, where they work with large manufacturing companies to do a number of different projects that help them become more sustainable. We had some of our analytics students, as a matter of fact, work on a project that helped a company come up with the algorithm for capturing or clocking and measuring how they were capturing carbon, which helped them get their B certification. We also have X Lab, which is a specifically experiential learning and cutting edge research projects that we have our students work on. They work generally with large scale companies doing solving real world problems for them in a consultant like capacity, using tech ventures, AI and some of these things that really drive change within those larger organizations. And then the last two here, our Veal Institute for Entrepreneurship and Sears ThinkBox, always couple them together because they're actually located in the same building. It gives students a way to think outside the box a little bit with their degree when they're not in the classroom, thinking about how they want to approach entrepreneurship, or even Sears ThinkBox. I often see our students Sears ThinkBox, which is one of the largest maker spaces here in the States, attached to a school. It's 7 floors that follow the product development lifecycle, and they end at the top, which is the Vail Center for Entrepreneurship. The Sears ThinkBox is a great place to work and play outside of the classroom, to get connected with students from engineering or from other disciplines, and to really develop ideas around what you may want to develop through different projects and maybe through business ventures. But yes, those are our centers. And here's our building again, which is so great. I'm going to touch briefly on our different degree programs here, but know that you can always connect with me if you want to get a little bit more in depth. But we do have 4 distinct degree programs in our specialized master's suite. It is our Master's of Finance, our Master's of Accountancy, our Master's of Supply Chain Management, and then our Master's of Business Analytics. The Master's of Finance does have 2 tracks. That would be corporate finance and quantitative finance. And so we can talk through a little bit more of that when we get to the curriculum page on the next slide. Our programs all have 3 cores to them. They include a professional skills development, which includes coursework that helps you develop those professional skills, as well as prepares you for the job force. And then we also have experiential learning throughout that as well, through the Compass Capstone, and through some other projects that you'll do while you're a student here. And then we also have the technical know-how core to your program. This really sort of defines the 3 pillars that we want all of our students to walk away from with. They want the technical skill sets, you want the professional development, and you want to have that real world experience under your belt before you even graduate. Lastly, the Compass Capstone, which I touched on just a second ago, is your experiential learning opportunity. It is where you get to actually work with real world companies and solving real world problems and gaining that practical experience that you are applying outside of the classroom. And that is built into the curriculum. So all of our students graduate with all of that and are able to enter the job force even more ready to tackle those real world challenges. Diving a little bit deeper into the curriculum, I will let you all sort of read through some of the coursework here and give you some high level things of each of the programs. Our accountancy program definitely ties into some of that tax auditing. I know that I saw something in the chat. Someone was looking to learn a little bit more about some of the curriculum and the pieces that you'll be able to learn. Here's a good snapshot of what you'll get out of each of our programs as far as the coursework. Here you can see in business analytics, you're going to do a lot with business forecasting. There's a class on machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think someone asked about some of the different courses you would take with supply chain specifically. You can see here some of those classes, and I know that there's a question that we'll get to at the end of the presentation. I'll let Dr. Golder elaborate. But each of our degree programs are 30 credit hours and can be completed in just 9 months. Most of our students are really excited to do that, but some of them want to stay on. And so we do have a number of certificates that allow students to expand their degree and expand on that, the learning. So you would complete the 30 credit hours, and then you could do an internship, which we will help you with our career team to get to that. Once you have that internship, you would then return and complete a certificate, which is stackable on your degree and would help you to diversify those. And we have certificates in many different areas. We can talk a little bit more in detail about that after this call. To dive in a little bit into professional development, you will be, like, as I mentioned, taking coursework. One of them is leading teams, business communication. We do have that capstone series where you will be doing some real world work with real companies. And then we also have a professional development series. In addition to that, I have on this slide here access to the full career development team and over 20,000 alumni and companies. This is exactly what our career team works to do, but not only our career team. Our faculty does this as well. We have a very small class size, and so our faculty are able to be involved in that process a lot. As Dr. Golder mentioned at the beginning of the call, he is coming to Weatherhead from years of experience in industry, and he brings with him those connections. A lot of our faculty come from industry, which is a really great thing because they're able to share their knowledge, but also they're able to share with you their connections and get you connected in ways that other faculty would not. Digging a little bit deeper into what the career development team helps you with, career management. We give you personalized career guidance for students looking for internships or full-time placements, connecting with employers who are looking to hire our students. We have a vast network of employers who specifically want to hire our students. Our outreach starts with you before you even start classes here. Once you are admitted, our career team actually reaches out to you in the summer and will then start to do your development, right? Start with on that development. They have professional development classes, resume workshops, career strategies, mock interviews. If you're talking to any school and they're not mentioning these things, I would tell you to run for the hills. These are things that the career team should be helping you with all along the way, and huge alumni network support through our mentorship programs and through a million other things that we do to connect you. One of which is our career tracks. Our career team leads and has career tracks. Sometimes they're here in Cleveland because we have a lot of burgeoning industries here in Cleveland, but we've done tech treks to Seattle, where we take a group of students and they get to visit companies like Microsoft and Amazon. We've done treks to New York for finance, where students visit companies like JP Morgan Chase or maybe Morgan Stanley. And then KeyBank is actually a really large local bank here that is based here in Cleveland, which you can see on the screen. And then this is really the name drop slide. So this is where our students wind up working and going. This is a number of different companies here, and this is only a small sampling, but I got a slide from our career team, and they definitely wanted me to share that with you. We have a lot of student successes with a lot of these companies, and so if you're targeting these companies, this may be a really good choice for you to dig a little deeper into Weatherhead and see if we are a good fit for you. Okay, a little on the admissions process. Very quickly, we have a resume, undergraduate transcripts, 2 letters of recommendation, very straightforward. We do have a video essay, which I can talk in detail about in another call. And then we also do have a live interview if applicable. This is the QR code to link there. If you want to click that and save it, go right ahead. Give you 2 seconds, 1, 2. And then a little bit on the application timeline. We hope to encourage our students to apply by January 13th. That lines you up perfectly, as you can see, for getting your admission in late January, accepting your offer in February, getting your visa process started in March, and then getting the ability to utilize the AI visa interview tutor that we have through our partnership with Seed Global. We provide that to all of our students, and then meeting with the career team in June and starting your classes in August, being ready to hit the ground running for orientation. Lastly, if you want to connect with me, we do have another event coming up if you want to scan the big QR code, but it would be better if you scan the small one. The small one is my calendar invite. So if you want to schedule a one-on-one time to connect with me, feel free to do so. My calendar is filling up. So if you can't schedule until next year, we do have holiday coming up. And so this is a good time to do that and get ready for those things. Other than that, I see that Sahabat has jumped back on the call. She knows that I'm bad with time. She used to keep me to 4 minutes when I was in India. If you've ever been to the presentation, you know. But I think that's all that I have for you guys today. So thank you so much. Lastly, Seed 2026 is our code. You can add that to your application on the very last page. You'll see a signature page, and then they'll ask you if you've received a code. You'll put in their Seed 2026, and that automatically waives the $100 application fee, just because we like you and because you're with Seed Global. So thank you so much. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. You were in time, but we have kind of reached the time limit for the masterclass. But I'm going to keep you guys for a few more minutes, if that's okay, to take on a few questions at least from the Q&A box and try to answer those. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing all of that information. Quite a few questions which had come in around that. I'm hopeful all of you guys had your queries answered there. We will also be sharing the link to the video of today's session, the recording with all of you. So in case you've missed out on some part, you should be in a good spot. So Professor, I would like to start with you. The first question is from Spurti, who wants to know, how does the full-time MS CM program prepare students to model and manage instability in global supply chain networks? That is, once they graduate and they sort of move out. And while they are in the process of studying at Case Western, are there any specific modules or projects that cover complex areas such as custom laws, trade agreements, or auditing sources?
Yes, it's a great question. To give you the concise answer, the curriculum has three components. There's the professionalism component that Stephanie talked about. There's a functional component. This is how supply chains work. And then the analytic core that supports it all. And between the analytic core and the functional components, there are several courses that deal with the kinds of things we've been talking about today. One course in particular is called Global Supply Chains. And it's really all about how you model and interact with a truly global supply chain. All four of our programs, but I'll speak about supply chain right now, are designed to prepare you to hit the ground running. So depending on your level of expertise, you may not hit the ground running as a vice president running a supply chain, but you will hit the ground running to be a valued professional and expert in your area. And I like to think that our graduates are set for rapid career progression. And as long as you like dealing with chaos, this is a wonderful time to be a supply chain analyst.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Spurti, we hope that answers your question. It was pretty detailed as such. Stephanie, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. We spoke about application fee waivers. There's another question from Raj who wants to speak a little bit more about the scholarships that are offered for international students looking to apply at Case Western.
Yes, I love that. That is the elephant in the room question, right? So for international students, first and foremost, our tuition rate is even across international and domestic students. So there is no upcharge for being an international student at our school. In addition to that, we have our scholarships that we offer are all merit-based. We do a huge algorithm. We look at students based on three major criteria and really determine that scholarship based on those things. We are competitively scholarshiped. We do not have full funding. I always like to say that to students, but we do have a competitive scholarshiping process. And I always tell students that if you have questions, especially as you're going through the process. Looking at your application, I can tell you a little bit more. I have to see that on an individual basis as far as what that scholarship might look like for you based on the merit that we've laid out.
Great.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Right. Just to sort of add on to what Stephanie said, Case Western is also a part of the Seed Scholarship Fund. So they are offering 11 awards, which cover up to a certain amount of your tuition fee. What I would highly recommend is going on to our Seed website and having a look at the scholarship so you know as to what exactly is being covered. And there are still a few rounds and application deadlines which are left. So I would highly recommend applying to those because they are a part of the Seed Scholarship Fund. So Raj, we hope that answers your question. Professor, I'm going to bring you in back into the conversation and take the next question from Jessica, who wants to know, are there opportunities for students to get involved with faculty research, especially currently tracking the real-time impact of US or global trade politics on specific industries like manufacturing or tech? So does Case Western Reserve University offer students an opportunity to get involved with faculty that is working with industry or to directly get involved with or speak to, let's say, alumni or the global network that you have available, which can sort of help them pivot into the right industries upon their graduation?
Yeah, so there are several ways. We talked a little bit about experiential education, but everyone in all four of our programs will have one experience where they're working with professors and business leaders within the overall Northeast Ohio area. So that's one way. Another way is we do have research opportunities that pop up from time to time. They're highly competitive. They're always done at the professor's discretion. But yeah, exceptional students can get involved in detailed research.
Great, that helps. So I'm also going to just pull in Kush's question here, and Stephanie, Professor, any of you can answer this. Are international master's students eligible for graduate assistantships at Case Western?
Yes, they are. We do have graduate assistantships. They are competitive, and they're not awarded at the point of admission. They would be more of a position you would apply for as a kind of a part-time position, where you would apply for that after orientation. So once you're on campus, you can apply for positions that come open. I actually have 2 graduate assistants that work directly with me in our admissions office. I know there's a multitude of them that work in the Fowler Center, in different areas across our college. They are competitive, I tell people that, but they would not be tied to your tuition. They would more focus on giving you offsetting that cost of living, right? You would be able to utilize the funds how you need them.
Great, thank you. So like Professor mentioned, like Stephanie mentioned, there are quite a few opportunities for you to connect, get in touch with the career services team day one when you get on campus so that you can make the most of these resources. The next question, Stephanie, is for you, and this is a very, very important one and something that is on all the students' mind is if you can help them understand how to create a compelling application, which parameters should they really sort of focus on, which will help them stand out in the application process as such?
Oh, that's great. That is a great question. So we really are looking at 3 factors when we're analyzing or reviewing applications. We want to see that you have the academic ability. So anything you can do, most of that you can't really change. You're going to submit your transcripts. You're going to submit any test scores. Test scores definitely help if you have some areas where you are not as strong in your academics. But our school is test optional, so you do not have to submit those. But if you want to stand out a little bit, I say definitely go for that. I would say the other areas where we look at career readiness. So if you're looking to make sure that you have some sort of background or leaning into the skill set that would prepare you for a career in the field that you're choosing. So if you have no connection to finance and maybe you want to consider one of the other programs that we have, that would be more of a fit. But we do get a lot of students who pivot. So thinking about your career, making sure your resume is really up to date, making sure that you are presenting yourself in that way. The other thing is through our video essay, right? Thinking about how you present yourself in that essay so that you can really appeal to students. I say interacting and engaging with the team here, with the faculty here, is going to really make you stand out above other students. Coming to our sessions, I say those things also help as well, making sure that we know a little bit more about you. And that's what our interview process, and that's what the rest of the application review is helping us to get to do. So I tell students those are the main components. Be nice. We also are looking at your interpersonal skills. We're going to put you in front of lots of alumni. We're going to put you in front of lots of different companies and organizations. So we want you to have a calm, professional, but also very relaxed feeling when you are interacting with us. Just be an overall good person. That helps your application a lot. Doing it early helps a lot too. Making sure you've completed your application early is something that you get on our radar very soon. You're in the pipeline, you're completing all the things, and you're responsive to emails and to calls. Those are really big things for our school, is we want to know that you're going to be engaged when you're here as a student, and that shows during the application process as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Sabir, I hope that answers your question, and I'm sure that's a question on everyone's mind. So that should give you all some insight. I'm going to take my last question for the evening before I wrap up the session today. So, Professor, you could probably answer this, and Stephanie, feel free to jump on. This is from Meet, who wants to know, since today's masterclass address rising costs and a need to shift sourcing, what are the key tools or framework that the Weatherhead program teaches us to make these strategic decisions as such?
That's a great question. So it comes from a couple of different places. First of all, the analytic work, which is distributed across several different classes, is critically important, so that you know exactly how to analyze things and what, which analytic techniques are best to use for what kind of problems. But then it's also the courses that help you understand kind of the structure of global supply chains. So, for example, every student in the supply chain program starts by taking operations and supply chain management, which is a high level view of the operations management components in the supply chain structure. Then you get deeper with things like optimization analytics and statistics. And then in the second semester, you bring it all together with the global logistics course. So not to make it all about kind of the flow of goods. There's also courses in strategic sourcing, planning, both supply and demand. In the space of 30 credit hours, there's not enough time to go super deep. But what we do absolutely make sure of is that you've got the breadth to be able to handle just about any project or problem that a company throws at you in the marketplace. I hope I answered it.
Yes, that does help. So with that, I would like to take this opportunity once again to thank Professor and to thank Stephanie. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking out time from your busy schedule and being present here. And of course, our wonderful audience, thank you so much for being here. I can still see a close to 150 of you who are still in the audience. I hope you had a wonderful time, got answers to most of your questions. We've dropped some very important links in the chat window, so feel free to reach out to Seed Global Education or to the university directly in case you have any further questions or queries. With that, I'm signing off. So thank you once again. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.